Good evening. My name is Vicki Fagey, LT class of 2014, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of the LT board this year. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Tomorrow graduation and alumni reunion. Before we get started, if you're an LT alum, be sure to put your LT year in front of your name. You can see my name as an example. Be sure to mute yourself, but please do leave your camera on so we can take pictures and see everyone. Additionally, you can use the chat to send messages of encouragement to class members and to each other. Closed captioning is enabled for the event, but you have the option to turn it off in your Zoom toolbar if that's your personal preference. You have two options for viewing tonight's event, speaker and gallery view, and you can switch between these. If you're on speaker view, you'll only see the speakers and ASL interpreter. If in gallery view, you'll be able to see all of the attendees, and the program is being recorded. You'll find a link to the program for tonight's event in the chat. I'd like to begin by saying that I'm calling in tonight from Kent, the traditional land of the coastal Salish people, specifically the Duwamish and Muckleshoot tribes. We open tonight's session with this acknowledgement and pay tribute to the original stewards of this land, acknowledging the Native communities that have historic and ongoing relationships with the lands where we meet. Many of you are calling in from around the country. Please go to native-land.ca and put in the city you are calling from or where you grew up to learn more about the tribes and tribal nations in your part of the world. We'd like to do a quick poll to see who's on the call with us today. You'll see a poll posted on your screen. Please click the button that represents your affiliation with LT. While you're doing that, I want to remind you that LT has been around for 38 years, and we have over 2,300 alumni who are decision makers and leaders all around Puget Sound and beyond. We have alums with us this evening from each of the decades since LT's inception in 1984, and I know that folks are eager to reconnect in the alumni breakout rooms after the graduation program. And we're all delighted that we have some members of LT's incoming class, LT'22, who have joined us. You can see here all of the different classes and where people fit in. Now let's take a look to see where people are calling in from. We launched the second poll. Wonderful. I'm not able to see the poll, or I would comment on what it was that we're seeing. There we go. As you can see, most of us are from Seattle, but we have 3% from outside of the US. We have folks from all over the country. So thank you for taking the time to fill that out and for taking the time to come and be a part of our celebration. Welcome to all of you. Tonight's a celebration and recognition of this year's class and those graduates from the last 38 years who come from the private, public, and not-for-profit sectors. Our alumni are leaders who have a deeper understanding of the issues that shape our region, use their voice, and position to advocate for positive systemic change, and are effectively engaged in and with the community. Even in this time of physical distancing, we have a collection of leaders working for change. Each graduating class gives us hope, adding to a group of leaders devoted to our region, and I'm happy to be celebrating together. The work of LT involves a community. LT is grateful for the many servant leaders who volunteer countless hours throughout the year to challenge, inspire, and engage the class, and who challenge all of us to be more effective, collaborative civic leaders. I'd like to thank and recognize those of you who served on the LT board, the curriculum committee, screening and selection committee, Alumni Engagement and Leadership Committee, or volunteered for LT in any capacity this year. We thank you for your service. And I want to give a special shout out to our sponsors who are recognized on the screen. Without your generous financial contributions, LT would not be what it is today, and tonight would not be possible. Please join me in thanking these generous organizations. They're also listed in your program. Now I'll turn the program over to Frank Naum, LT'13 of the We Belong Here project. He's the director at Civic Commons and chair of the LT Curriculum Committee, a group of 25 volunteers who plan the year's challenge days and retreats. Frank will give you a brief idea of what this year's class has experienced. Frank?
Thanks, Vicki, and greetings to the class of 2021. You did it, congrats. The class of 2021's friends, colleagues, and family members, and to all LT Alumni Curriculum Committee and board members and other supporters. And thank you to the staff at LT for their tireless work this year, which is really unlike any other year that we may have lived through. Also, appreciations to Brandon and to Hercules for doing the ASL interpretation. Much love. So this class is unique. I don't have to tell you that. In the history of LT, it was the first class to be entirely virtual. None of us knew whether LT's goals of building community, belonging, and trusted relationships could translate into an online environment. This class exceeded all expectations and leaned into the work in the midst of a pandemic, economic uncertainty, racial reckoning, and disruption in every aspect of our lives. LT really became a community and a place of refuge and learning. And together we spent the year exploring 3 objectives that we'll see on the screen. The first one is community and belonging. And this objective is really about building bridges across public, private, and nonprofit sectors and across differences. We want our class to feel inspired and empowered to act by belonging to an enduring community of regional stewards, many who are here on the call tonight. Thank you for Alumni for showing your support. The second is regional issues. We want to understand regional issues and how they are interconnected, including how systemic racism impedes our ability to create a healthy community for all. And we can't have leadership tomorrow without leadership. So lastly, but not last, of course, we want to have skills, tools, and strategies to act as a leader and change agent in one's own chosen area, including an ability to work with others to address systemic racism and build a more resilient and equitable region. In addition to being all virtual, other innovations this year included race-based caucusing at every gathering. And for any audience members who are not familiar with race-based caucusing, I can provide a little bit of the reason why we found it so important. Since I talked about the objectives and the goals for the class, racial equity and anti-racism is a huge part of what we're trying to do as leaders and learn. And really, white people and people of color each have work to do separately and together. For white people, a caucus provides time and space to work together intentionally, understanding white culture and white privilege, and to increase one's critical analysis around these concepts. For people of color, it's really a great place for them to work with their peers on their experiences of internalized racism, for healing, and to work towards liberation. And so caucusing is a space where people can go. We had a Black African caucus, we had a non-Black POC caucus, and a white ally caucus. And so this is a great space for people to come together with people from similar racialized backgrounds and have a conversation. But the rest of the class year is together. So that is not, it's a great way to do both, to have people together and have people in different groups to have these conversations in really safe spaces. Another innovation this year was the use of open space. So the class organized topic discussions at the end of the days, and they really had ownership of what they wanted to talk about in relation to the topic of the day. We also introduced a lot of opportunities for music, art, semantics were woven into the days to create a much more way to interact with our whole being, our hearts, our minds, our souls, our creativity. And then our lab teams work with nonprofit partners to advance their racial equity work. So please look in your program to see the nonprofits and the projects this year's class worked on. So what I've observed from this class are the following. One, even though it's virtual, they really care for each other. Like, I am so surprised that we can have all Zoom meetings, all digital virtual conversations, and the way they support each other. If you look at the chat, I'm sure you're seeing it now. If you're at any of our challenge days, you see the chat just blow up with their conversations and their call outs and their love for one another and their encouragement and their support. And they didn't just want to learn something, they wanted to do something. And not alone, but together. They really wanted to have collective impact. And is that not the whole idea of Leadership Tomorrow? As I said before, this class created bonds. They haven't seen each other, but they have these powerful relationships. And I know as vaccinations roll out, I know many of them are already starting to meet at parks and outdoor venues and really getting to see each other's faces for the first time, which must be so exciting. I'm incredibly surprised by the level of relationship established. Their desire to get together in person is an indicator of that. I've seen the class take lots of risks to grow their leadership capacities and dive into extremely difficult work, into the extremely difficult work of navigating social power dynamics and different approaches to leadership in flat structured teams. And lastly, I love their lab teams and their work with nonprofit organizations doing good together in the world. No one knows where our region will be 5 years from now, much less 1 year from now. What I do know is that we need to access our imagination and how we live in relation to each other. Through new relationships, learnings around how the region is connected, and how to use their leadership voices. The class of 2021 will continue to work to bend the arc of justice towards, the arc of history towards justice and more and more. Now I want to show you a video of this year's class, which will give you a sense of their experience in their own words. Thank you to Yo-Yo String Creative for putting this video together completely from still conversations and screenshots from Zoom. So enjoy this video and hear from the class themselves.
Thanks to each of you for being here today. We'll just have a conversation.
It's not like LT came in and said, this is how you can be a better listener. Instead, LT put me in a room with a bunch of other incredible leaders that taught me how to be a better listener.
There were full days, but I always left feeling full of knowledge, full of hope, full of inspiration. Meeting so many folks who are in it, who are interested in making change, who are interested in thinking about ways to do things in new ways and, different ideas.
But I always ended the day with a really full cup. It's funny, like every single morning before a challenge day, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I always left really fulfilled.
Realize as a leader, like trusting and giving grace to people and knowing that their intention is to do their best and give their most. And so you supporting that rather than sort of the opposite.
I really feel like this year is just the beginning of my experience with LT and with my cohort members. I really see it as sort of an entry point to the LT community and to continuing this work and continuing connections with everyone. By being surrounded by, folks in the class, that it was really a way for me to up my own game and, just connect with a lot of really talented people.
Even with the virtual setting, how vulnerable and open people were willing to get, but I just continued to be surprised and feel really supported by everybody, wading into some pretty difficult conversations. Just it was one of the most eye-opening and thoughtful and vulnerable conversations I've gotten to participate in the past year, and I really appreciate everyone who showed up for that.
But one of the biggest things that I really enjoyed was my lab team. I felt like I learned a lot from everyone, and I feel like we worked really well together, and I hope to be friends. I hope this is just the beginning of our lifelong friendship.
The perspective that leadership is a kind of never finished journey. So I think investing in a program that takes you on a journey to kind of explore self, community, and work with diverse people really contributes to that journey of leadership and learning more about yourself and where you maybe fit in and how you can make change.
And I have become more comfortable talking about these topics, particularly around race and equity. Well, what I knew going into this is I knew that I didn't know a lot, and then now I know that I know a little bit, and there's even more that I don't know. Being able to recognize that, being able to express that more openly than I had before is something that has helped me out.
I think what I've learned from this program is that many of the things that we do in our routine, either personal, life or work, or even as leaders, some of the things that we do, the way we act, the way we interact with people, may not be kind of like in the best interest of promoting anti-racist or equity and equality.
One word to describe my LT experience is foundational.
Full.
Eye-opening.
Empathy.
Fulfilled or fulfilling.
I would say my one word was impactful.
Cooperation.
I think I'll say community.
Enlightening.
And if I had to describe my one word for LT'21 would be inspirational. I felt inspired to try new things. I have tried new things. I felt inspired to break beyond some of the bounds I have set for myself. And I'm looking forward.
Wow. Thank you so much for that video. And that, it's almost like, why did I even speak? Why didn't we just show the video? There was no need for me to even talk. It's just really maybe to get your emotions down and your energy down, to have the video really uplift you. Perhaps maybe that's why they thought to have me speak. But I want to take this next time to talk about the class speaker. And so each year in LT's graduation, the class will nominate or ask one of their peers to speak on behalf of the class. In the last couple of years, we've really switched that paradigm a little bit. We still have speakers from the class, but they're really speaking from their own identities and experiences. And as I told you before, the class had racial caucuses, 3 different ones. And so we're going to actually hear speakers from each of the caucuses. We'll hear first from Brittney Jackson and Jason Eastman from the Black Caucus. The non-Black POC caucus has created a video to tell their story. And then Jordan Lyon will speak from his perspective as a member of the White Anti-Racist Caucus.
Thank you, Frank. And good evening, everyone. My name is Brittney Jackson. I am an assistant director of admission at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, and a proud member of Leadership Tomorrow's class of 2021. I have to be honest, 10-year-old Brittney is really struggling right now, and was really struggling probably 3 days before this 5-minute spotlight where I would speak with everyone and share thoughts about my identity and things that I've learned. And I hit probably the worst procrastination and writer's block string I could have imagined. And nothing I had thought about, none of my bag of tricks, like when I would walk, I would run, I would do everything to kind of clear my mind, and nothing really helped. And to be totally frank, I actually think I know why my procrastination was so bad this time around. And if I'm being honest, by the time I turned 10 years old, I had developed a pretty intense thumb-sucking habit that was hard to ignore. A once understandable self-soothing strategy had become maladaptive and distracting. And after several failed attempts by extended family members to break the habit, my wonderful mother, my wonderful, beautiful, strong, independent, incredible mother, alumna of LT, class of 2005, Janice Jackson Haley, she just said, why don't you leave her alone? She'll figure it out on her own. But all of this noise, you're scaring her and you're making it worse. And so eventually that's what everyone did. They just left me alone. And slowly but surely, I convinced myself that there weren't any monsters hiding around any dark corners, and that the bad guys weren't coming to get me, and that maybe I didn't need my thumb after all. And reflecting on that story brings me to one of Alexis Pauline Gumb's many brilliant quotes as a queer Black feminist scholar. And I want to share that quote with you all. Choreographic presence, circumpolar hold, deep listening, coordination. Call back the school that fear untaught me. Give me the heartbeat I remember and call it love. Sometimes it takes time to scare the monsters out from under your bed. I'm here to tell you today, please give yourself that time. I'm asking you, class members, please give yourself that time. Call it love. Love is what brought you here. Love is what will carry you through. And to my classmates, but especially to the Black Caucus and to my incredible Lab Team 5, you can find me longing for the next opportunity to connect and share. I cannot wait to see you, hold us, hold our space, and belong to each other for however long that divine moment lasts. Ashe.
Thank you so much, Brittney. Really, one of the best parts of my LT experience has been listening to Brittney and her words. They're wonderful. You're wonderful. I love what you say. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Eastman, and my pronouns are he, him. I look back at the last 9 months of Leadership Tomorrow, LT, and I think about the people. I think about the Black leaders in the Black Caucus and how amazing they've been. And my LT team, team number one, hey. Team Reed and their staff, Lab Team number 1, they have been doing awesome work. There's so many people that I've met this year who have given me a lot of inspiration, and for that I thank them. I think about my LT experience as thinking about the small choices that led me to come here today. Most of my life I've been more comfortable taking kind of the back seat, backstage, hiding in my own world and not really necessarily having to do anything to help. 10 years ago, I went into an ASL class, an American Sign Language class, for the first time. And at that moment, I made the small decision to be the first person to volunteer for basically everything. 5 years ago, at my former job, we had a racial equity team meeting. And I would watch the discussions and raise my hand and hold the situation and say, stop, enough. The fact that we have a lot of discussion, hold the discussion and start the action. So last year, I wasn't sure. I hesitated about joining LT. I knew I'd be working with people who were brilliant and successful and confident. And I asked myself, should I be there? And I decided to go ahead and join and participate. And now I'm here presenting at LT at graduation, which is great. So now I'm on the board for the Seattle Deaf Film Festival. My old job, I was the equity team and then there's a leadership team, which is basically come into its own position. All of this happened because of the small decisions, the small choices that I made up until now. This graduating class is one that's about to come into the community as a group of leaders. And we have some enormous challenges to face. This system of racism and white supremacy, climate change, this terrible income imbalance, the list goes on. it feels overwhelming, honestly. It is overwhelming. But I'm grateful today when we have the fact that though we are overwhelmed, I can still think about my time at LT, which reminds myself that my small decisions today and your small decisions as well can lead to big things tomorrow. So congratulations, LT'21. Thank you so much.
What's really unique about our caucus in particular is that it's even so diverse within our own caucus.
I was born in the United States and raised here, but my parents immigrated from South Korea, and I spent 7 years.
I was born in Hawaii, I was born and raised in the United States and traveled all around the
half
US.
Palestinian, half white. I grew
My
up in Los
parents
Angeles.
were born in Kenya, East Africa, but I was born and raised in
I was born in
California.
India and I moved to the US.
I was born in Western Washington, grandparents in India.
Born and raised in China until
I was born in Vietnam, and I was in California, and then in Texas,
Guatemala, Costa Rica, and then in Taiwan.
The caucusing has helped me to validate a lot of my experiences by just hearing from others that they experienced something similar.
There's a level of understanding that we're starting with that makes it a space to have really to dive deeper into conversations and have really meaningful engagement that, you know, doesn't take a lot to get there. We can just kind of start there and build on that versus having to provide that education in order to have the conversation.
I've been in caucusing spaces before, and I think this was really impactful because it builds that listening and empathy skill that is sometimes a little bit different, you know, when things happen and you're just hearing about people and, you know, their sorrow and outrage, but they're not really directly connected to the impacted communities.
My multicultural background is a part of my leadership DNA. The perspective of always coming into cultural spaces as another, when you're straddling both of these different cultures, you're required to come to that space and meet folks where they're at with the norms and customs that make them feel comfortable, that they feel comfortable with. And me adapting to those environments and allows me to connect with other cultural groups that otherwise would have a difficult time maybe communicating or finding consensus on topics.
Growing up in a traditional Asian household, it's very typical to be taught that you should respect your elders. Asian culture is very hierarchical. And so being a young leader, leading a very large organization at such a young age has been a huge challenge for me because I have this mindset of people who are older are higher than me. But that's not the case in my position. And I had a challenge with really pushing some of the leadership principles that we actually learned in this program, like challenge the process, right? As a 29-year-old leading an organization with over 2,000 employees, it was really hard for me to challenge the process. And I think that going through LT, learning about the 5 principles and figuring out how you can best go about doing this has really helped me to overcome that imposter syndrome and really embrace the fact that I earned this position of leadership and that I should embrace it and really run with it.
My Leadership Tomorrow experience gave me a voice to ask bold questions and to question the status quo. Also helped me step into a leadership role by getting selected to my company's advisory council.
I was trying to show up in a way that was very forthright and in a way brash. So the way I saw people who were further along in their careers than I, who tended to be white and male. And they tended to value less the kind of quiet diplomacy that I'd learned really sort of from my Filipino heritage, a kind of quiet diplomacy and consensus building and listening to others and providing space for different viewpoints. And what I realized through sort of Leadership Tomorrow and the exercises that we did was that is important and it matters. And it's not less than coming in over the top and proclaiming a solution and acting like you already know the answer at the beginning of a meeting.
It's been nice to see how other people enact relationship-based or even alternative ways of leadership because of who they are and how they were brought up. And I think one of the most memorable moments for me in LT was to kind of live that, at the beginning of LT, I was kind of guarded or wanted to present the best version of myself, AKA the most white or model minority version of myself. And then I was like, yo, that's messed up. And so I opened up to my lab team and was more vulnerable. And I think that was a pivotal moment, both in for myself and my understanding of leadership.
The past year and the LT experience had really made me realize compassion is such a key piece of leadership. And being compassionate of the different perspectives and different lived experiences that makes a person and the identity that they show and what they bring to the table help set a foundation for kind of collaboration.
I got in a conversation in the non-Black POC caucus about Asian hate crimes and how much we should be focusing on that versus the ongoing work, the focus for equity for Black folks in America. And can we do both at the same time? And I think I initially probably sounded insensitive because I felt like we needed to be singularly focused on one task. But I think that's why we have so many people in LT and doing this work, is that there's a lot of us that as a team can work on many different things at once and need to in order to make progress. And so that to me really stood out as a moment where I had to challenge my assumption about what was possible in equity work.
Corporate social responsibility. So working with the community to understand the needs.
And so how do we get those voices into the decision-making process?
Contribute to increasing representation and belonging for underrepresented groups.
Give them a space where they're comfortable providing that perspective so that we're not always hearing the same voices.
Including this topic in our conversation and every decision that we make, where are we opening our offices and how is that impacting the surrounding community?
How to bring out the best of other people so that we give other people opportunities to shine.
Continue to perpetuate the thought that leadership is shared. It is something that we can all take part in. And what is great about that is that you then have the ability to, pass the weight or share the weight.
Congratulations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Lyon, and I use he, him pronouns. Thank you. Brittney, if you were anxious for 3 days, it's been about 3 weeks for me. I think, honestly, the hour leading up to this, I think I went to the bathroom more times than I did before my bar mitzvah. And so I'm just easing into this. The one promise I made to myself was that I wanted to start in my body. And so sensing into my being and my truth in this moment. I'm actually shaking a little bit. I feel like some anxiety, like in my chest, some tightness in my shoulders. There's like a rumbling in my belly, and to be honest, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I've spent much of my career doing community building work, and have come to a place where I believe that for us to bring the world we are yearning for into being, it might not be my place to be taking up space at the front of the room, to be another white leader holding on to power instead of letting it flow, which is, it's hard for me and how I've been raised, both by my family and in society. For most of my life, I've correlated success and my own self-worth, my own enoughness, around an image of me as a stereotypical leader in the front of the room. And it's stopped me from truly elevating and empowering others at times. It's part of my healing journey, both for me and my ancestors, to break that cycle that's been perpetuated by privilege. In the lead up to this speech, our white anti-racism caucus actually discussed not taking up any space here today, and rather shift the focus and attention back to the voices and stories of the Black and non-Black POC caucus speakers. But after both receiving feedback that it's important for us to share our stories, and me personally taking some time to reflect on my role as a white man in this work, I feel it's necessary for us to share a bit of our journey and our transformations. So here I am today doing something that most definitely makes me feel uncomfortable in all the ways that tell me I'm growing through it. And this is a messy, important space for us to be in as white leaders of Seattle today. To first off, be deeply honest with ourselves and openly heal towards no longer putting white supremacist, patriarchal, colonistic bullshit into how we're living, working, and being in relationship with others. This is unhealed trauma and unmet needs perpetuating more pain, more trauma that only cycles deeper. And second, to find the space to be our full authentic selves, sharing our gifts, our experiences, our wisdom with the world, making sure all of our needs are met at the same time that we fundamentally shift power in ways that our city and country has failed to up to now. I don't have any answers here. I view this as a lifelong learning journey of listening, healing, and growing. But this is vital for us to figure out together as a community, as we hold each other accountable, to turn our words not just into actions, but into practice. And by shifting power, I mean a lot of things. Maybe even thinking twice and exploring alternatives to accepting that spot on that panel. Maybe giving up pursuing that promotion or that elected position, or even that ambitious dream of yours and choosing to support someone who maybe hasn't felt as entitled or destined to it as you have. Or maybe it's naming that tension you felt or noticed when a peer or superior acted out of microaggression to a fellow team member of color. Let power flow. And of course, fundamental to this shift of power is money. Shift money into communities, especially Black, Indigenous, and other POC communities. Just for 1 second, imagine the generational wealth America's Black communities would have today if they were originally paid for building so much of this country. I personally have inherited so much privilege and opportunity because my parents own the home they have. Imagine 300 years of that shit, generation after generation. We've got a lot of work to do to make up for that. Let money flow. It's plain and simple. And then drop any paternalistic, you have to do things this way, strings attached type of thing. Let communities choose what to do with it. They know best. Look for the people, organizations, and places where real impact is rippling from, where deep relationships are being cultivated, and make sure those leaders, organizers, artists, activists, and change makers can feel as secure in their livelihood as most of you do here today, every day. Give trust to build trust. And beyond that, it's crucial that we all do the inner work as well. The healing and transformation we need is not just on a systems level, it's on the individual and relational levels as well. Everything will fractal out from that. I think of my broken attachment story, my childhood traumas, my search for belonging, my struggles with my self-image and self-worth and comparison, judgment, competition with others or some ideal standard, even tensions, fears, and pains from my past intimate partnerships. These unhealed parts of ourselves, amplified by our white body privilege, manifest and shape the relationships all around us, in our families, our friendships, our communities, our teams, our organizations. and end up becoming instilled in the systems and structures we create around us. All of this for me really touches on shedding the internalized individualism we've been taught to believe is human nature, and remembering back to our interdependence and interconnectedness. This individualism that makes us feel separate from the other, makes us put our needs ahead of another's, makes us disconnected from our land, our water, our food, our workers, our energy. We have to question the stories behind our actions and align deeper to our values. This is where our own healing journeys ripple out into the larger societal systems. If you want your child to live in a city without homelessness, then you're going to have to not just worry about their education and sending them to the best school, but also all of your neighbors' children's education and what school they go to, what future they have. And I see that, it's an understandable, deep human need of yours for your child and their future. That deep fear of them not living a thriving life of fulfillment and security. That protective love in you, it's beautiful, but we need to transcend that small us to a bigger us. There's an undeniable larger need for that. True security isn't a gated community that protects your family of haves from the have-nots. It's an ecosystem of thriving communities that nurtures every individual in having their own needs met. This past year has made this reality of our interconnectedness so obvious that I humbly implore you all not to lose sight of it. In the coming months, we'll be encouraged at every turn to simply go right back to how things were before the pandemic, to go back to disconnecting with what's inside and what's in between, to stay in the transactional, not the relational, to keep extracting, consuming, and accumulating instead of regenerating, nurturing, and sharing, leaving competition and scarcity instead of collaboration and abundance. We have a stark choice ahead of us this year. We might not get too many other chances to really ride the waves of change, transformation, and potential liberation like this again. What are you going to do? How are you going to be? Thank you all for giving me a few moments to speak to you today. I believe in you.
Wow, thank you. I'm Sue Bennett, Executive Director of Leadership Tomorrow. I'm really happy to be with you tonight. Thank you, Brittney, Jason, Jordan, and everyone in the videos. Your reflections on vulnerability and leadership, they've moved me, and I am sure I speak for most of the folks on this call. We are so lucky to have you in our community. I am excited to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight, Sean Goode, who is the Executive Director of Choose 180. His full bio is in your program. I am fortunate at LT to hear many inspirational speakers throughout the year, and I have to say, Sean stands out even in that group. He speaks about looking at possibilities versus problems, about the power of community and connection, and the importance of being able to move on from mistakes. He's also married to an LT alum, which shows wisdom and insight for sure. Please join me in welcoming Sean.
Thank you so very much, Sue. You're absolutely right. The best choice I made was marrying the most amazing woman of the world, Kimberly Goode, class of 13, LT 13. My wife, I'm starting now so you can halfway listen to me, okay? She's in another room taking a class, but she promised that she would halfway lean in and listen to me to honor her commitment to LT. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the whole spousal situation. Anyhow, I digress. I am incredibly grateful to be sharing space with all of you. Man, Jordan, like you got done and I was like, can we just record that and play that for every white person ever? And like run that back for like white people everywhere. I just need you to like keep saying that for the next 30 years. So when you get older, like older white people will be listening to you too and be like, yes, like that's a peer. Because I'm sure some folks look at you and they're like, oh, he's one of those young white guys. He'll figure it out when he gets to fully live into his privilege and benefit from his whiteness. So thank you so much for that, Jordan. Jason, what a gifted communicator. I am honored by your intentionality and your presence and your willingness to be courageous and lean in to a place of strength where others may see weakness. And to my favorite hype person ever, Brittney Jackson, I got you spotlighted on mine, Brittney, because like as I give this this keynote, I need to make sure that I have you in view, because when I spoke to the class, like you're the one that got me going. So if I say things that I shouldn't say, and if I overstep someplace I shouldn't overstep, I want you to blame Brittney. Okay, blame Brittney Jackson, LT'21. You can find her at University of Puget Sound. Go Loggers. And beyond being married to the most amazing woman in the world, I have two incredible teenage children. My son Samuel, who is 19, just finished his freshman year at Central Washington University. I'm incredibly proud of him. He makes 19-year-old decisions. He recently got a tattoo to go with his nose ring. It's only been a year. So a tattoo and a nose ring. I can't wait for that sophomore year. Hey, what should be next? And then my beautiful, incredibly brilliant and gifted orator of a daughter, Hope, who will be going into her freshman year of high school. She's 13, and yeah, special, super special. I keep telling people I think she's learned more on TikTok this year than she has through her virtual classes. And TikTok is a great place to learn. And I may have shared this with the LT class, but I keep telling people because it blows my mind every time I think of it. And it's like one of the things she taught me from TikTok was that you are born with all of your teeth already inside of your skull, right? And like, I think I knew this intellectually, but once you see the picture of this, right, you can't unsee the picture of a toddler's skull with like all these teeth. It looks like something from an alien movie. It's like, it'll blow your absolute mind. And so that's things that are really important. And also I'm a connoisseur of dad jokes. And so I must open up with a dad joke before I get into the meat of things. And a special shout out to both Hercules and Brandon for their interpretation, because I tend to speak at a cadence that isn't friendly for ASL interpreters, but these two got it. So I'm gonna pause right there for the applause. Yes, yes, yes. All right, so here's the joke. What did Jay-Z call his wife before they were married? Fiance. Fiance, get it? Because Beyonce, yeah, yeah. If you didn't get it now, you'll get it later. It is bad on purpose, y'all. It is bad on purpose. So I steward a cause, Choose 180, as their executive director. I've been leading this work since 2017, January. And I had some comments prepared, and after listening to the speeches, I'm going to deviate a bit from some of what I was going to share because I feel moved in a particular way, which I imagined was going to happen. And so like, that's why I use these pink Post-it notes, and I don't spend hours like laboriously crafting lengthy keynote presentations, because things just kind of happen as they happen. So I lead this work. And the work that I lead is an effort to dismantle systems of injustice and support young people who are impacted by those systems. And in simple form, we partner with people like prosecuting attorneys, judges, school superintendents, law enforcement officials to transform the way that they administer justice while simultaneously supporting the young people who are harmed by those systems. And we believe that we have to do this in partnership, because if we don't transform the system that's causing harm, then we benefit from the harm by existing. And there is no nonprofit organization that should exist in perpetuity, because you exist because there's suffering, and the suffering should go away. And so the need for your work should go away. But it's incredibly complex. And so we have to constantly be churning away at transforming these systems. And we do so. And we had some wins here in King County, and we began to work other places across the nation. And I can tell you, no matter how many wins we get, there are many days where it feels like I'm walking and standing in place. Consider this for a moment. We had slavery. I know this is not a shock to many of you. And then they abolished slavery. And then they had vagrancy laws. Oh, before there were slave patrols. Then there was vagrancy laws, which essentially meant if you were living in poverty and Black, you were criminalized. If you were criminalized because of a vagrancy law, then you were put into worker camps, essentially. They do convict leasing, which then would have you enslaved for being impoverished because you didn't have access to the capital that you actually created in the first place. I mean, think about it. Black folks were capital, right? Like at the beginning of it all, we were the capital that created capitalism, which is why you still see the disparate outcomes today, because the chocolate chip can't tell the cookie what it tastes like if you're picking up what I'm putting down, right? And when you look at the fact that Black families have a nickel of wealth to the dollar that white families hold, you can kind of see how this thing gets exacerbated over time by not dealing with it over the course of the last 450 years or so. So as I stand in the midst of this work, and I hold the tension of this cause and this conviction that we have to get better, that we have to move forward, that we have to progress. And we see great results. I mean, over 90% of the young people we support stay away from the criminal legal system and don't re-engage with it within 12 months of participating in our programming. A lot of people would look at that and say, that is incredible, that is wonderful. And I agree. And it has little to do with us and much to do with the efficacy that already lives within the young people we're serving. Young people's behavior didn't need to be criminalized in the first place in order for them to get the support they needed in order to see themselves as they were instead of as they had been criminalized as. See, at the core of our cause, there's two strong principles that tie us to the work, and these two principles are what's going to guide me in the conversation we're having on this evening. The first principle is that we believe young people are possibilities to be developed and not problems to be solved. Ruminate on that for a moment. Possibilities to be developed and not problems to be solved. So many of our nonprofit organizations, our social service structures, our organizational biased lenses are tilted towards solving the problem of what a young person is doing. We see it all the time. There's young people who are dying of gun violence. We have to solve that. We have to keep young people from dying. We have to solve that problem. There's young people who are dropping out of school. We have to solve that problem. There's young people who are in families where there's a ton of trauma. We have to solve that problem. And what we inadvertently do is end up exacerbating the problem by solving the problem, because every time we solve the problem, we come up with another problem to solve. It's because throughout the duration of this situation, we're centering ourselves and not centering the young person, because at any moment you center the young person, you no longer see them as a problem, because that would be an offense to the person you're centering. Now, I've been married. We'll be celebrating 10 years of marriage this year. You can do the thing. Yeah, 10 years of marriage this year. I'm also celebrating my 40th birthday on July 7th. sgoode@choose180.org. You can email me to celebrate that with me on July 7th. That's only a couple weeks away. And so as I celebrate 40 and we celebrate 10 years of marriage, for every day since we've been married, my wife and I have the same conversation in the morning. She says, "How are you, husband?" I said, "I'm amazing." She said, "How do you sleep?" I said, "Next to an angel," right? Because every morning I wake up next to an angel. Now, that's because I'm centering my wife in our marriage. And as I center my wife in our marriage, I see nothing but a possibility every morning that I wake up, because that's what's in front of me. Because if I were to see anything else, I would not be seeing her for her humanity. And I would be taking her and turning her into something that she isn't, instead of celebrating her for something that she is. And so as we begin to have this conversation around leadership, the first thing I want to elevate is the significance of shifting from a leadership paradigm of I am the best problem solver to a paradigm of I generate possibilities, right? Anybody can solve problems. That's basic arithmetic. It takes a special kind of person to generate a possibility. The second principle that guides us is grace. We believe that grace selectively applied is favoritism. And that means you have to extend grace to everybody. Grace to people who you think deserve it, grace to people who you don't think deserve it, just grace. And by extending that grace, you liberate people to become instead of limiting to what you see, the way that you see them as. We know what this is like. If you've ever held a grudge, it's because you're limiting your vision of that person to the moment that they've done the thing. When we say you do the crime, you do the time, what we're saying is that we can't see you as fully human until you reconcile with your wrong, and then you can be human again. See, grace liberates us from those chains, and it'd be simple to extend that grace to the young people and the families we serve, but it's so much more complex when we begin to extend that grace to our prosecuting partners, our court partners, our law enforcement partners, who are often doing things that are causing the very harm that creates the necessity for us to exist in the first place. But if we see the young people through the lens of possibility, then I'm also obligated to see our law enforcement officers through the lens of possibility. If we see our young people through the lens of grace, then I'm also obligated to see our court partners through the lens of grace. And what this means, at the end of the day, that the way that I view the world has nothing to do with my wants and desires, but has everything to do with the humanity that's present to me as I engage with the world around me. Now, so I'm going to pull it back. I'm going to make it make sense. So just walk with me for a second, okay? So how do you stay hopeful in this world? Incredibly complex, right? I mean, we just witnessed the murder of George Floyd not but a few months ago, and people are already kind of over that. I watched people commit billions of dollars to nonprofit organizations and way under deliver on those commitments. We had people pour in an influx of resources to our cause last year, just about this time. And guess what? This month, last month, the month before, none of those became reoccurring gifts. So how quick are we to move on from the emotional rise that we got from watching a Black man die? How quick are we to move on from that moment of pain, that moment of injustice? And then we had the audacity when Chauvin got convicted to celebrate as if that meant something. Because candidly, I can't celebrate an outcome from an unjust system that causes my community harm, because then I align myself with the oppressor and I begin to celebrate the very tools that oppress my people. Then I become a vehicle of the oppression that I'm working to dismantle. It's complex, y'all. And even as I read, I read excerpts from speeches from the 60s, and the language seemingly applies to everything that's happening today. So as we lead into tomorrow, where are we going? And where does this journey end? Is it all pointless? Is it an exercise in futility? The work that I do, the work that many of you do, if we begin to correct the racial hierarchy, if we begin to dismantle white supremacy, if we begin to put people of color in leadership positions, will we somehow correct the imbalance that's present in the social economic gap? Is that what's going to do the trick? Is that what's going to make the difference? How many years will it take for us to get to a place where we can say we've arrived? If it's been 60 now, and I can read the same words from John F. Kennedy and look at our schools today and see that they're more segregated now than they were at that time, where are we going and where have we arrived? This is not an inspirational keynote so far. I know it seems kind of demoralizing. You're probably thinking like, okay, well, what's the point? Like, this doesn't sound great. Can you actually land this someplace where I feel like I'm doing something positive or there's something constructive I can do? Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm getting there. But I wanna lay the foundation to be clear that like things are not great, y'all. Like things are not okay. When the pandemic passes, you know, things were not okay for people before the pandemic. They're still not okay for people after the pandemic. Folks that were housing insecure before the pandemic, they're still housing insecure now. Folks that were underemployed before the pandemic, they're still underemployed now. You know, I heard a stat the other day that blew my mind, that the Black middle class is primarily made up of people who work in the social service sector. Think about that for a minute. The Black middle class is primarily made up of people who work in the social service sector. That means the Black middle class existence is predicated upon the suffering of other Black and brown people in order for it to be present as we move forward into the future. Y'all, this thing is messed up, and it's messed up deep. Like these roots go deep, 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 deep. These roots go farther back than the 30 some odd years that Leadership Tomorrow has been around. These roots go deep. But there is something that we can do, and there is hope on the horizon. And this is what gets me up and gets me going in the morning. This is why I can wake up at 4 a.m. every day on the dot, excited to engage in the miracle of a new day. And it's because I've abandoned something that I used to hold tightly to and have adopted a new way of viewing the world around me. See, I used to believe that we were on a linear journey, and that over time, we would be getting closer to a place of healing, closer to a place of hope, closer to a place of restoration, closer that we would be eventually progressing so we could get to a place of celebration, a place of jubilee, a time that we could come together, have a kumbaya moment, join hands, and agree that we all have got to this place together. But the more I spend time in this work, the less I believe that this journey we are on is linear. And in fact, if I look at the world around me, nature itself dictates that these linear journeys may not exist in the way that we suppose. I often talk about journeying towards justice, which is an ideology that is immersed in the great quote from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. about the arc of morality bending towards justice. And there's this journey towards justice. And I thought that if I continued to do this work tirelessly, we would get closer. And I thought for a moment, just for a brief moment after the murder of George Floyd, that we would be catapulted to closer proximity of a place more just. I thought that we were going somewhere. And then I look at the voters' restriction laws that are passing across our country. I look at the response to the mobilization of Black and brown voices creating further restriction for Black and brown voices. I look at the response to reimagining public safety to be electing mayors like in New York, where they're likely to elect a mayor that is incredibly pro-police through the lens of public safety. You see, there's this backlash that anytime we push forward to a place of progress, there's a dramatic push back. Anytime you stretch the rubber band too quick, it either breaks or it snaps back. I'm telling you that this linear journey is not what it is that we supposed it to be. Then what is it? I found some inspiration in an unlikely place. I found it in the monarch butterfly. The monarch butterfly's journey is one that's very unique.
Who's kidding you?
Angelique, I'm glad you joined. I'm glad you joined us quick. Can you go on mute? I love you, sis. Thank you. And I found the inspiration in the monarch butterfly. And it's the monarch butterfly cycle. See, it begins in the Southwest and it migrates all the way up to the Northeast. And to get from the Southwest to the Northeast, it takes 3 generations. Here's the beauty of it, y'all. The first generation makes it one part of the journey, but that second generation that's born there has no reference point from where that first journey began or where it's supposed to go, less that which is encoded on the DNA of the butterfly itself. And the second generation is born, and then it goes the second leg. It dies. The third generation, no reference point from where the previous generation they came, still continues the journey because it's encoded into the DNA of the creation, and it makes it to its peak migration in the Northeast. And when it gets to its peak migration, the fourth generation is born, the Methuselah generation, which then somehow makes it all the way back to the Southwest. Do you know what happens when it makes it back to the Southwest? It begins the journey all over again. Now see, the butterfly that's the first leg of the journey doesn't know that it's the first leg of the journey. It just knows that it's on a journey. And the butterfly that's the second leg of the journey doesn't know that it's on the second leg of the journey. It just knows that it's on a journey. And the butterfly that's the third leg of the journey does not know that it's on a journey. It just knows, or doesn't know that it's the third leg of the journey, that it just knows it's on a journey. And the Methuselah generation doesn't know that it's playing the culminating song to the triumphant homecoming and going to birth the next generation to begin the cycle all over again. How often in our leadership are we spending too much time worrying about which leg of the journey we're on and not enough time focused on the fact that we have the privilege to travel in the first place? I mean, I know we are worried about legacy, but legacy doesn't matter. What matters is the leg of the journey you see in front of you and how you honor that leg of the journey and travel it out with integrity. How you honor that leg of the journey and you model the way, how you honor that leg of the journey and you inspire a shared vision, how you honor that leg of the journey and you challenge the process, how you honor that leg of the journey and you enable others to act, how you honor that leg of the journey and you encourage the heart. All that matters is how you honor that leg of the journey. Whether you're the first, second, third, or fourth, it does not matter, but what matters is the integrity in which you travel with. Now, see, this is where I get excited. Because if this is a cycle, then we're not dealing with the linear journey. What we're dealing with is concentric circles. And if we're dealing with concentric circles, just imagine with me for a moment that our pursuit isn't where we're going along a continuum, but our pursuit is how much closer are we getting to the core of our being as we journey together. See, in concentric circles, the tighter you get to the center, the easier it is to travel. The farther away you are from the circle, the longer and more laborious the journey will be. What if we simplify this, not by being persuaded that there's someplace we need to arrive? Y'all do know leadership is not a destination, right? Y'all do know leadership is not a role. You do know that you don't like achieve leadership by being put on a board. You don't achieve leadership by being elected to public service. You don't achieve leadership by getting promoted at your job. That's not leadership. Those are titles. Those are roles. That's not leadership. So what if we centered ourselves on the values of what it is we believe to be a leader, and every day we woke up in pursuit of those values and found ourselves traveling so tight to those values that this circle journey that we're on is one that's efficient. And when we do die and our journey is over, whoever picks up after us is so much closer to the core of what it's supposed to look like in the first place, because we left it in a way that honored the integrity of the journey we were traveling in the first place. Leadership tomorrow, graduates, that journey begins today. Now, I have a principle, a very simple principle that I live by. I don't worry about yesterday. I don't really think too much about tomorrow. But what I do, when my kids were younger, they would laugh at that. They're older now, so they don't think that's funny at all. What I do is I wake up every morning fully persuaded to serve today. Whoever is in front of me, I'm going to serve them. Whoever's on my calendar, I'm going to serve them. Whatever space I'm invited to, I'm going to serve them. I don't care if it's some fulfillionaire that's contributing to our cause, or a young person who's being served by our work and contributing with their life. I don't care how people are showing up, if it's their time, treasure, or talent. I'm going to serve you in the very same way, because it's not about who you are. It's not about my orientation to your positionality. It's about my commitment to serve you, and serve you not because of the role that I have, but serve you because I'm on this journey and I'm not sure when the leg of this race is going to be over. And I'm not worried about the legacy that I leave behind, but I'm fully persuaded that the leg I see in front of me beckons me to a place that's closer to these values of leadership. So I'm going to serve you from that place, wherever you are, whoever you are, because I'm committed to that today. And leadership tomorrow, if I get the gift of tomorrow, then I'm going to do the same thing then. And if the next tomorrow comes, I'm committed to doing the same thing. And before I know it, when this journey is over, my life will matter only as much as I've modeled, only as much as I lived, only as much as my existence drew us closer to the core of who we are in the first place. We need to first elevate possibilities, because it's in elevating possibilities we see our full humanity. Humanity is where it all begins. It's where it all starts. And we need to abandon this thought process of a linear journey that we're traveling on, and recognize that leadership is not a destination that we're in pursuit of, but leadership is at the core of concentric circles that we're traveling around. And if we center ourselves on that day in and day out, we will be the leader that we feel called to be, that we will do what leaders do, and ultimately have the outcome of what great leadership looks like, which in my professional opinion, looks like being surrounded by people who have been served well. And lastly, leadership tomorrow, graduates, today the leadership begins, and serve today. And tomorrow, serve tomorrow. The day after, serve the day after, but do not be misled. Our future is uncertain. The only guarantee we have is the moment that's now. And in this moment, this very moment, I'm excited. In this moment, this very moment, despite the horrific history of our past, despite 450 years of oppression, despite policing that's still happening outside in our streets today that's disproportionately impacting Black and brown children, despite an economic wage gap that seems like it will never be overcome, despite a crisis of people who are living unhoused and are being treated like vagrants and not like human beings, despite an educational crisis where young Black and brown children don't want to go back to the classroom because they finally felt seen and heard in settings of their own personal homes, despite the disparate impact of the medical system and how Black women have a harder time in pregnancy than white women, and COVID, because of co-occurring symptoms, has disproportionately impacted Black families. Despite all of those things, you could put despite ... despite ... I have hope. Not because I feel like we're going to get to someplace different tomorrow, but I'm going to be different today and hope that my tomorrow will create the space for that difference to make an impact. Y'all, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but let's stay firmly rooted in the beautiful moment that is now. Possibilities over problems, grace over guilt, journey towards leadership with leadership at the center. and serve today with all that you have. I'm grateful. I'm honored. I'm sweaty because it's hot in my office, and this is the first time I put a dress shirt on and a tie since October of last year. But I'm blessed by your presence. God bless y'all.
Wow. I drew the short straw to follow Sean. Oh my gosh, Sean, in the chat, somebody said you're not Sean Goode. You're Sean Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Sean, for inspiring us. Possibilities over problems. Leaders do more than solve problems. They generate possibilities. Extending grace. Monarch butterflies, journeys, honoring the leg of the journey we're each on. Oh, so much to take away from your comments. Thank you. Thank you for all you do in our region and for being with us tonight. And special shout out to ASL interpreter Brandon for keeping up with Sean. That was really beautiful to watch. All right, it is now that time in the program where we get to formally graduate the class of 2021. What a year this has been. You've shown courage, adaptability, the ability to deal with ambiguity and paradox, leadership traits that will serve you well as you lead into your future. If you'll select the gallery view up in the right-hand corner and unmute yourselves, let's take a moment to jointly congratulate our graduates.
Hey,
Congratulations.
you did it.
Good job.
Let's
Excellent.
Congratulations.
Proud
of you.
Good job. Congratulations, Peyina.
Alicia Maria, Sheila, let's go.
Fabulous, fabulous.
Wow. Wow.
I have just a few closing remarks. I do want to say that we've done something special and unique this year. For the first time ever, we've commissioned an artist to create an image for this year's class. The talented artist who we found through Wanawari is Kamisha Turner, and she created this image for the class, which interestingly, Brittney spoke about love and the importance of love and leadership. And Kamisha, when she learned about the class and this program and all of the work that folks are doing, she created this image too, to symbolize love and encouragement, which is necessary to leaders everywhere. We put the image on a special limited edition mug as a gift for this year's class. Big, big thanks to Deborah Streeter for making that happen. And there is a link to the artist in the chat if you'd like to know more about Kamisha. I also want to thank the sponsors again for their generosity and support of civic leadership. Honestly, we can't do this work without support of civic leaders and companies like these. So special thanks to them for making tonight possible. I also want to give a shout out to the folks who helped create the music you listened to before the program, and you'll get to listen to it afterwards. Thanks to Jennifer Ness and Reese and Keiko. Special thanks to Betsy and Lee for technical support tonight, and big, big thanks to this year's coaches and curriculum committee for designing, facilitating, and leading all of the content and parts of this year's program. And my last thanks to the fantastic LT staff, Tamara, Keiko, Rebecca, Megan, for your courage, dedication, creativity, and commitment to this important work and to each other. Will you join me in a special call out to Tamara, whose birthday is today, and join me in wishing her the very best. Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Tamara.
Happy birthday, Tamara.
Happy birthday.
She's 29. All right, as Sean said, leadership is not about position or title. It's an action, a verb. It's about taking responsibility to see those around us rise. We all do better when we all do better. Thank you for being a part of this community and celebrating the leaders and the actions that move us toward a healthier, more equitable, and just region for all. This concludes the graduation portion of tonight's event. Thanks to those of you who are guests, family, colleagues, supporters. So glad you joined us tonight. For those of you who are alumni, and that includes LT'21, this is our third year of adding an alumni reunion to this graduation event. It's a wonderful time for us to connect with each other. We will convene again at 7. Please do not log off. During this break, we will be putting you in breakout rooms by LT year. If you haven't put your LT year before your name, please do it now. You can do it the same way I have, LT'_year, no spaces. LT'21, join us at 7 o'clock and we will have a special room for you to connect with each other. So grab a snack, a beverage, come back at 7. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you for joining us tonight.